Story begins in a quiet, heavy atmosphere as the weight of recent events starts to settle in. Lingering silence fills the air, marking a moment of somber reflection before the internal storm breaks. Tension builds as the reality of the situation begins to take hold, leaving no room for escape. Every detail of the surroundings seems to emphasize the gravity of what has just occurred. Stillness continues to reign, serving as a prelude to the emotional turmoil about to surface. Scene remains frozen in a state of shock, capturing a singular moment of profound realization. Suddenly, a wave of confusion hits as he begins to question his own state of mind and why he feels so disconnected. He looks out at everything before him, struggling to process the sheer scale of the situation. Haunting doubt creeps in as he wonders if he is truly responsible for all of this, insisting to himself that he never intended for things to go this far. Despair takes over as he repeatedly asks himself how it could have possibly ended up this way. Heavy silence fills the air as the weight of the situation begins to settle in. The atmosphere remains tense, lingering on the uncertainty of what is to come. Time seems to stretch thin as the reality of his confinement becomes undeniable. Sudden sharp realization cuts through his thoughts, jolting him into focus. He lets out a long, weary breath, trying to steady his racing heart. He wonders if he has been trapped in that same recurring nightmare once again. The clinical voice of an instructor announces the arrival of restrict level Esper number 1002, Jai Mingyuan. The orders are clear, and cold he must prepare for an immediate interrogation. Being that he is awake, the instructor explains that the higher-ups prefer to eliminate potential threats directly rather than taking risks. Visitor reminds him that few others in this facility would be as patient or tolerant as they are being right now. He is told that if he simply accepts how dangerous his superpower is and cooperates, his future will be much less difficult. The word superpower echoes in his mind, feeling completely foreign to his own experience. Frustration boils over as he points out they took him from the orphanage and locked him in the dark for power he doesn't even know he possesses. The instructor insists their assessment is perfect, labeling him a rating sequence so dangerous he could eventually destroy the entire world. While digging deeper into his past, the investigator mentions having reached out to the orphanage where he once lived. The other children there used to call him a freak because he would isolate himself, wrapping his body tightly in rolls of tissue paper. Caretakers even recalled his habit of sneaking into the computer room just to play games whenever he could. The question is posed directly to him, asking if these strange childhood stories are actually true. He asks if they truly want to know the answer, and the examiner confirms that the discovery is the entire reason for their conversation. He offers a deal, demanding to be let out of his confinement in exchange for the truth. Heavy silence fills the room as the weight of his demand hangs in the air. Ignoring the plea for freedom, the official explains that his tests indicate he is likely a reality-manipulating Esper, whose powers will manifest through the lens of his interest in gaming. Theory is that his abilities might present themselves as game levels designed to test and guide him toward mastering his potential. Frustrated by the cold analysis, he asks if the person across from him is just a programmed robot, annoyed by the mechanical way they talk to themselves. With a weary sigh, the examiner concludes that he still fails to grasp the reality of his situation, ending the session and telling him to get some rest. Desperate to be heard, he calls out for the examiner to wait, refusing to let the conversation end so abruptly. He argues that he understands his situation all too well, having been kept in isolation for an entire month. The weight of his confinement boils over as he demands to know exactly when he will finally be allowed to leave. Cold response he receives offers little comfort, suggesting that if he behaves and cooperates with their research, there might be a chance. He's told that his departure will only be possible once he has grown up, a vague promise that feels more like a sentence. Grim realization sets in. He suspects there's a high probability he will never walk out of that laboratory alive. He fears that by the time he is deemed ready to leave, he will be nothing more than a lifeless corpse. Suddenly, the silence is broken by a mysterious greeting, welcoming him as Player 1. The atmosphere shifts instantly, leaving him in a moment of stunned silence as his surroundings change. Shocked by the sudden turn of events, he can only react with confusion to the strange phenomenon unfolding around him. Looking around at the unfamiliar space, he wonders where he has been taken. He recalls the instructor mentioning that his superpower would likely manifest in a form related to games. Realization hits him that this strange interface might actually be the awakening of his own power. For him, the system confirms his suspicions as it finishes loading the infinite splitting game. The system hums to life, announcing that the character creation phase is now officially underway. Silent moment passes as the interface prepares to present the first of the major superhuman paths. The first option is an Esper, one of the 3 dominant races. These superhumans possess unique powers rooted in their personal history. Profile displays Gu Wenyu, an 11-year-old boy with spirit and speed ranked at D, while his physical strength starts at rank 0. System adds a cryptic note to this path, suggesting that after a decade together, Gu Wenyu's family members are all harboring deep, unknown secrets. Screen flickers as it prepares the secondary character option for consideration. Tension builds as the next identity begins to materialize on the display. New profile loads, offering a completely different approach to the world. Second option is an anomaly envoy named Andre, a 16-year-old Caucasian male with a spirit rating of rank C. Living in Denmark, he has spent his life obsessed with bizarre tales and extraordinary adventures, utilizing fragments from secret realms. After receiving a mysterious invitation letter in his mind, Andre's journey begins. System now presents a choice: pick one of these 2 identities to step onto the stage of the real world. Decision is made without hesitation. The choice falls on the Esper Gu Wenyu. Immediately, the system prompts for a cultivation route: hero, villain, or a morally gray character. Selecting the third option, a unique cultivation system is generated for a character who will walk the line as a morally gray figure. System begins to manifest Gu Wenyu into the real world, weaving his existence into the fabric of logical reality. Recalls being taken from an orphanage in Lijiang. If the game's version of that city matches reality, he sees a tactical advantage. Realizes he can use the persona to uncover the truth about the organization that captured him and brought him to this point. As a neutral force wandering between light and darkness, he believes he will find more opportunities to gather the intelligence he needs. Final countdown begins as the system prepares for his landing in Lijiang, within the borders of Dragon Country. The world around him begins to dissolve as the transition into the physical realm commences. Sensory data floods in as the digital and the physical start to merge. The process is nearly complete, the veil between realities growing thin. The atmosphere shifts, signaling the end of the simulation and the start of his new life. The final pulse of energy, the character is fully integrated into the world. The void gives way to a sudden sharp clarity. Squinting against the brightness, he realizes he is feeling the warmth of actual sunlight. Nearby, the joyful shouts of children celebrating the start of summer vacation fill the air, their excitement for the season contrasting with the gravity of his mission. As the sounds of the world wash over him, he takes a moment to process his surroundings, realizing exactly where he has arrived. The weight of the transition lingers as he scans the environment, absorbing the reality of his new situation. His focus sharpens on the landscape before him, confirming the significance of this specific location. Surge of recognition hits him as he realizes he is finally standing in the outside world. Sheer disbelief of his escape settles in as he marvels at the fact that he actually managed to make it out. Realization begins to sink in as he realizes he has actually done it. He has truly escaped and finally made it out to the other side. The world around him begins to shift into focus as he grounds himself in his new reality. His best friend, Lai Kimping, interrupts his thoughts to ask if he wants to head over to his house later. Suddenly, a sharp pain flares in his head as the system begins loading his character memories. He braces himself against the mental strain of the incoming information. Noticing his sudden distress, Lai Kimping asks with concern if he is doing all right. Letting out a breath of relief, he tries to compose himself and shake off the lingering discomfort. He reassures his friend that he is fine, claiming his head just aches slightly from sleeping for too long. Explaining that he has errands to run today, he promises to visit when he has some free time. He notes that since it is summer vacation, they will have plenty of opportunities to catch up later. As he starts to walk away, his friend calls out in confusion, wondering where he is heading in such a hurry. Leaving the conversation behind, he moves forward with a new sense of purpose. The environment around him feels vibrant and full of life for the first time. Every step he takes confirms that this is no longer a simulation or a dream. Crisp air and the warmth of the sun prove it is all real. He has truly, finally made it out. As the reality of his freedom settles in, he begins to take notice of his surroundings, realizing exactly where he has landed. He's in Liajing, a destination he reached by relying solely on his own superpower. Leaves him questioning the nature of his arrival, wondering if he has possessed an existing person or if he has somehow created a new presence and forcibly inserted himself into the history of this world. He reflects on the butterfly effect, knowing that even a tiny change can trigger a massive chain reaction across the globe. Have an ability that essentially brainwashes the world into accepting his existence feels almost too exaggerated to be true. Lets out a heavy breath, the sheer weight of his situation finally sinking in. All makes sense now if anyone were to discover the true extent of his power. His original body would likely be confined to a laboratory for the rest of his life. Searching through his newly loaded memories, he tries to identify the specific superpower tied to his current body. He focuses inward, sifting through the mental data to understand his new physical capabilities. Transition remains steady as he continues to process the unfamiliar sensations of this life. Every detail of his new identity begins to sharpen, anchoring him further into the present moment. Silence around him allows for a brief moment of deep, internal concentration. He remains still, carefully navigating the complex web of information stored within his mind. With each passing second, the connection between his consciousness and the body grows stronger. Final pieces of his current state begin to fall into place, revealing a startling truth. Power manifesting within him is known as black restraint straps, a unique and formidable ability. The manifestation of this power sets a heavy atmosphere as its true potential begins to reveal itself. Silent tension hangs in the air, while the surrounding environment reacts to the sudden surge of energy. Every detail of the scene remains still, yet the presence of the new ability is impossible to ignore. Moments pass in quiet anticipation as the shift in power starts to ripple outward. Focus narrows, capturing a fleeting instance of movement that defies natural logic. As the power takes flight, it leaves a trail of bewilderment for anyone watching from below. High above, the speed and intensity of the movement become a blur against the sky. Fused voices rise from the ground as onlookers wonder if they just saw something fly over their heads, with some even questioning if it was an unidentified flying object. While others laugh off the sighting as a simple trick of the eyes, the user of this power can only marvel at how incredible this new ability feels. Despite its intimidating name of pitch-black restraint straps, the user realizes it functions like a perfect fusion of famous web-slinging and ironclad heroes. This realization, the journey into mastering such a versatile and formidable power truly begins. The path leads directly to the gates of the Liajing orphanage. Seeing the building in person brings a rush of realization that the place actually exists. In the attic of this very orphanage, many hours were spent gazing at the city and dreaming of the world beyond. Yet not a single step was ever taken outside those walls. Heavy silence lingers as the weight of those confined years settles in. The deep breath, it is time to move forward and leave the past behind. The journey continues through the city streets toward a new destination. Arriving at the Liajing residential compound, the reality of stepping into the body's home becomes clear, though the very concept of family feels entirely foreign and inexperienced. Memories provide a simple layout of this new life set of parents, an older brother, a younger sister, and the identity of Gu Wenyu. History is marred by tragedy, as 5 years ago the mother, Su Ying, was taken by a superpower organization affiliated with the United Nations. Father, Gu Chang'an, fell into a deep depression when his appeals for her return failed, and he has not set foot in this home for 2 years. The father absent, the only family members left to navigate are the old brother, Gu Zui, and the younger sister, Su Zixian. Suddenly, an unexpected vision interrupts these thoughts. Fusion sets in as what appears to be a system-setting panel manifests before his eyes. The interface hovers silently, waiting for reaction. In this moment, the boundary between reality and the supernatural begins to blur. That boundary fades. He finds himself staring at what appears to be a mysterious system-setting panel manifesting before his eyes. The attention is immediately drawn to a specific section regarding quests, sparking a sense of curiosity about what lies ahead. Pauses for a moment, absorbing the strange mechanical reality of his new situation. Silence is broken by a voice calling out to him, expressing how long they have been waiting for their younger brother to arrive. While he is being scolded for standing around aimlessly, a second main quest flashes into view, tasking him with uncovering the secrets his father, Gu Zhuon, is hiding. Dressing him as Gu Qiai, the voice urgently beckons him to stop hesitating and enter at once. Inside, he is greeted by a calm voice noting his early return, prompting a soft, surprised acknowledgement from him. Dinner has already been prepared, and he is encouraged to sit down and eat while the meal is still hot. The atmosphere remains quiet as the transition to the meal begins. He takes a moment to observe his surroundings in the silence. Lingering pause settles over the room as he settles in. Looking at the person before him, he can't help but question if they were truly just cooking, given their current state. Despite his suspicions, the food looked delicious, but his focus quickly shifts to the absence of his younger sister, wondering why she didn't return with them. He is told that she decided to stay at her classmate's house for the night. While this matches the memories of Gu Wenyu, he remains deeply uncertain about what Su Zimai is actually hiding. Claiming exhaustion, the other person excuses themselves to rest in their room, leaving him to finish the meal alone. Left to his own devices, he watches them depart. He sits alone, the weight of his thought beginning to surface. Quiet of the house allows him to focus on his own internal progress. Considers his potential upgrades, weighing the Madness branch, which extends his restraint straps to 15 meters against the Ruthless branch that would allow him to detect an opponent's secret data upon contact. He stares into the void of his options, contemplating his next move. The one skill point available, he decides that a skill suited for peeping and secret investigation is the most fitting choice for his current needs. His concentration is broken by a sudden interruption from the television, announcing breaking news. Report details how an anomalous known as Blue Arc recently thwarted a superpowered crime at the Hayenway building, capturing the wanted criminal Giant Proof. The news footage plays out, showcasing the scale of the conflict. He watches the broadcast intently, absorbing the information about these powerful figures. He reflects on how anomalists are simply superpowered individuals working for affiliate associations, with Blue Arc standing out as a premier figure among them. Chilling realization strikes him as he wonders if the very anomalist association he just considered could be the same organization that captured his original body for research. Without hesitating further, he decides it is time to progress his abilities. Spends one skill point to unlock the restraint strap senses, a hidden skill branch that immediately grants him access to even deeper potential. As the new power takes hold, a physical transformation begins to settle within him. Sensation is unlike anything he has felt before, as the entire layout of the room suddenly maps itself clearly within his mind. The single thought, he can now peer into any location he desires, his perception stretching far beyond normal limits. Along with his new awareness, he receives his quest rewards one splitting point, one skill point, and one attribute point. He examines the splitting points, learning they can be used to manifest entirely new game characters into the real world. Possibility of controlling multiple characters simultaneously in the future leaves him stunned. But the moment is interrupted by an urgent mission alert for Blue Arc regarding a criminal known as Green Wings at Lijing Square. Pauses, hearing the distinct crackling sound of a walkie-talkie nearby. Transmission is coming directly from Gu Kiai's room, pulling his attention away from his rewards. Exhaustion hits him as he realizes another crisis is already unfolding. Desperately wants a break, having only just returned home to nurse his injuries after his last battle with a powered criminal. Situation is dire. Green Wings has taken hostages and demanded Blue Arc's presence, threatening to kill one person every 10 minutes until he arrives. Seeing the relentless nature of his life, he prepares for what feels like an endless night. Quiet tension of the night deepens as a heavy silence sets the stage for a long-awaited confrontation. The weary breath, the realization finally sinks in that the famous Blue Arc mentioned in the news is actually his own old brother, Gu Kiai. Pressure mounts as he is warned to move quickly, since the first hostage is already being targeted if a death is captured on a public broadcast. The association branch's reputation will be permanently tarnished. He acknowledges the gravity of the situation with a simple, hushed confirmation, fully aware of the stakes at hand. As he rushes toward the scene, he urgently instructs his team to stall for time, stressing the importance of keeping the hostages safe until he can arrive. Witnessing Blue Arc's movement, an observer notes that despite being injured, the Lijing City Star maintains an impressive level of speed. Stakes rise as a new quest objective appears, tasking him with forming a cooperative bond with Blue Arc to navigate the inner circles of the Anomalist Association. It's 10:20 in the evening at Lijing Square, and the pressure of this forced quest is becoming a real headache as he wonders if Blue Arc has made it to the center yet. Situation on the ground is deteriorating quickly. Green Wings is growing increasingly irritable, and the safety of the hostages hangs by a thread. Heavy atmosphere is punctuated only by the soft, desperate sounds of the hostages sobbing in fear. Ears continue to fall as the captives realize how dire their circumstances have become. Green Wings loses patience, shouting a final warning that if Blue Arc doesn't stop hiding within 10 seconds, the first hostage will be executed. Ruthless countdown begins, starting from 10 and moving to 9 as the tension becomes unbearable. Numbers drop rapidly from 8 down to 5, then through 4 and 3, drawing closer to a violent conclusion. The count reaching 2, the moment of truth finally arrives. Blue Arc finally steps into the light, prompting a mocking welcome from Green Wings, who sneers at the beloved Prince of Lijing City. Dismissing the villain's cliched remarks as a nuisance, he demandingly asks what the antagonist is actually after. Green Wings proposes a simple, dark bargain. If Blue Arc surrenders and leaves with him immediately, the hostages will be allowed to live. Blue Arc counters by suggesting he could simply rescue the hostages first and arrest the villain afterward. But Green Wings reveals a deadly complication: the captives are rigged with time bombs. Even if Blue Arc's fast, accomplices hidden within the crowd are holding detonators, ready to trigger an explosion that would claim everyone the moment he makes a move. Green Wings taunts him, asking if he plans to kill him regardless, mockingly suggesting that a few dead hostages shouldn't matter to someone who has seen as much madness as he has. In normal circumstances, Blue Arc would have the confidence to dismantle the devices, but tonight, his body is battered and exhausted from a previous bloody battle. In the midst of the tension, one of the hostages cries out, pleading with Blue Arc not to surrender himself to the villain. The outburst is met with a harsh demand for silence as the atmosphere grows increasingly volatile. Weight of the decision hangs heavily in the air as both sides remain locked in a grim stalemate. Losing his patience, Green Wings declares that if Blue Arc continues to hesitate, he will have his accomplices press the buttons and make the choice for him, giving the order to fire. Desperation takes hold as a frantic cry rings out to stop the looming catastrophe before it is too late. Sudden silence follows, confusing Green Wings, who shouts at his men, demanding to know why they aren't following his command. The unexpected stillness shifts the dynamic of the confrontation, leaving the villain's threat hanging in a moment of eerie uncertainty. Eerie silence is suddenly broken by a sharp cry of confusion as the protagonist struggles to comprehend the strange phenomenon unfolding before them. Low, distorted vibration begins to hum through the air, signaling a subtle but ominous shift in the environment. Pressure becomes unbearable, forcing a strained grunt of physical agony as the weight of the situation takes its toll. The following moment, everything seems to hang in a brief, breathless suspension, heightening the tension of the unknown. Visual field clears slightly, revealing the immediate consequences of the preceding outburst. Heavy stillness settles over the area, allowing the gravity of the encounter to truly sink in. The immediate threat seemingly paused, the atmosphere remains thick with anticipation for whatever comes next. Tension breaks as an interrogation begins, with demands being made about whose side the newcomer is on. It's our issue that any reckless move will lead to the immediate detonation of bombs attached to the hostages, yet the group insists the stranger is not one of their own. Desperation grows as the threat is repeated, with the captor demanding the stranger back off or everyone dies. Despite the pressure, the response remains the same: the person interfering has no connection to them. Amidst the chaos, Gu Wenyu observed the situation through the lens of a unique cultivation system known as the social superstar system. Quest appears, requiring the establishment of a friendly relationship with a single spur. And though socializing feels like a difficult task, Gu Wenyu decides to attempt it. Captor's patience wears thin, screaming for the interloper to leave, or they will level half of Lich Square along with the hostages. Stakes have reached a breaking point, leaving no room for error. Calling the rules of social mastery, Gu Wenyu realizes that building affinity requires acting according to the other person's mindset. Close the distance, the strategy must be to mirror the opponent's own logic and behavior. Adopting a surprisingly calm demeanor, Gu Wenyu addresses the wing captor, even taunting them to go ahead and detonate the bombs if they truly have the courage to do so. Logic is cold and calculated, suggesting that the captor isn't foolish enough to follow through with such a self-destructive act. The hostages are killed, the captor loses all leverage in the standoff. Wenyu pushes the psychological pressure, asking whose situation would truly be worse if all the bargaining chips were gone. Infuriated and backed into a corner, the captor demands the release of a subordinate, threatening death if the command isn't followed immediately. Considering the next step in the social mastery guide, Gu Wenyu notes that satisfying the other party's needs is essential to pleasing them and moving the relationship forward. The composed air of cooperation, Gu Wenyu agrees to the demand, signaling a willingness to let go as requested. Muffled sound of surprise escapes as the sudden change in momentum catches them off guard. Situation quickly escalates into a sharp cry of intense pain, echoing the physical toll of the struggle. Heavy silence follows the outburst, hanging over the scene like a brief, tense pause. Wenyu questions why there is still conflict, pointing out that he followed the instructions to let go exactly as he was told. He addresses the winged figure directly, wondering why the man still looks so profoundly unhappy despite his compliance. The atmosphere remains thick with unspoken tension as the two continue to face off. Brief, startled reaction breaks through the quiet, signaling another shift in the confrontation. Anger boils over into a harsh, unfinished curse as the winged man reaches his breaking point. Observing the hostile response, Gu Wenyu begins to wonder if he somehow made a mistake in his approach. Citing that villains are simply too difficult to befriend, he resolves to seek out a more righteous person for his social efforts instead. Sudden shift in Gu Wenyu's attitude leaves the air filled with confusion. Scene ends with a final, strained grunt of discomfort as the physical reality of their clash settles in. Following the intense struggle, a heavy silence briefly takes hold as the momentum of the battle shifts entirely. Situation is suddenly inverted as the aggressors find themselves staring down the barrels of their own weapons. A chilling reminder that the tables have turned and justice is finally being served. Piercing cry of terror breaks the air as the gravity of the new threat sinks in for those who once held the power. System warning flashes, indicating that the roleplay anchor shift rate is climbing dangerously high if it exceeds 70%. There's a risk of entering a berserk state, coupled with a reminder to use more peaceful methods to maintain the trust of the righteous. Frustrated by the complexities of social interaction, a quiet hiss of annoyance escapes, followed by a dark consideration of whether reattaching the criminals' heads would solve the immediate problem. The surreal display of power, the scene alters so that it appears as though the thugs were never actually harmed. Sense of calm satisfaction follows the restoration, as everything is seemingly returned to a state that looks as good as new. Low grunt of lingering pain is heard, marking the physical toll even as the visual evidence of the violence disappears. The internal system continues to monitor the psychological strain, keeping a close watch on the shifting anger rate. Seeing a young witness, the explanation is offered that the terrifying violence was merely a holographic projection, urging the child to see that the men are still perfectly intact. The atmosphere remains tense as the deception settles over the scene. Quiet moment passes while the reality of the situation is processed by those left standing. Visual shift is complete, leaving behind a confusing blend of past violence and current normalcy. Despite the outward calm, another scream erupts as the anger shift rate climbs to 42%. Edging closer to the dangerous threshold of a total loss of control. It's the chaos. A voice mutters that the unfolding disaster was a complete accident, admitting that the pressure of social interaction is far more nerve-wracking than the situation at hand. Tension finally snaps as a sharp command calls for an end to the confusion, followed by a direct, demanding question about the stranger's true identity. Mysterious figure describes themselves as a morally gray character who resists being defined as either a hero or a villain, before confidently assuring Blue Arc that they are destined to become close allies. Blue Arc levels a heavy accusation, pointing out the undeniable fact that the stranger has just taken the lives of those thugs. Figure counters with a chilling question, asking if it would have been preferable for the hostages to have been the ones killed instead. Blue Arc insists that murder must lead to legal consequences. The stranger dismisses the idea as boring, suggesting those words are merely a performance for the cameras rather than a true belief. Wanting to cut through the pretense, the figure proposes that they step away to speak with Blue Arc in private. Stranger expresses a deep desire to finally hear what Blue Arc is actually thinking when the rest of the world isn't watching. Heavy silence falls between them as the weight of the proposal hangs in the air. Moment lingers, leaving the path forward uncertain as the two stand locked in a quiet clash of ideologies. Silence between them deepens, stretching into a tense pause as the weight of the situation settles. Heavy atmosphere takes hold while the next move is carefully weighed. Addressing Blue Arc directly, the speaker poses a final question regarding his willingness to cooperate and meet. Choice is ultimately left in Blue Arc's hands, placing the burden of the decision solely on him. Conversation hangs in the air, awaiting a response that could change everything. Quiet moment passes as the gravity of the ultimatum begins to sink in. Tension remains thick, highlighting the high stakes of the confrontation. Anger finally boils over as a frustrated fig snaps, feeling ignored and insisting that their presence be acknowledged after a long time of being tolerated. Counter-pressure is immediate, with a suggestion to surrender since the 5 accomplices on the roof have been neutralized and their detonators rendered useless. Trap is fully closed as the speaker reveals that the anomalous association has surrounded the entire area, leaving no hope for escape. Despite the overwhelming odds, a desperate reminder is brought up regarding the fate of those still caught in the crossfire. Situation remains precarious, as the final leverage rests on the fact that the hostages are still being held. Mention of hostages is met with a cold, challenging prompt to look closer and reconsider the reality of the situation. Sudden realization begins to dawn, shifting the atmosphere as the previous certainty wavers. Frustration boils over into a curse as the truth becomes undeniable, shattering the leverage they thought they held. A minute later, the dust is settled, and the focus shifts to a new encounter. Silence of the moment is heavy with anticipation as the figures stand their ground. Hidden presence is beckoned to step out, met with the smug assurance that their arrival was entirely expected. Tension remains high as the two parties finally face one another openly. Mysterious figure is addressed directly as Mr. Blue Arc, signaling that their identity is no longer a secret. Direct question is posed, demanding to know the true nature of his background and intentions. Calmly explains that while he lacks a formal name or code name for now, his growing public reputation will soon earn him many aliases born of love or fear, however. He quickly pivots the conversation to ask if his companion is curious about what has caught his eye. Mystery deepens as he stares ahead, leaving the significance of his gaze hanging in the air. Newspaper clipping from 5 years ago resurfaces, detailing a tragic accident where the anomalous association accidentally killed a mother. Despite the father's relentless attempts to sue the government, the identity of the killer remains a guarded secret, because the culprit belonged to the elite Rainbow Wings organization. Voice addresses Mr. Gukiai, drawing him back into the shadows of that painful history. Speaker reminds him that he was only 13, when he witnessed the horrific moment his mother was violently killed right before his eyes. Silence that follows is heavy with the weight of that traumatic memory. Voice offers forced sympathy, noting how an incomplete childhood breeds deep resentment against the anomalists who hide their abuse of power behind the mask of justice. It's revealed that this tragedy is the sole reason he became an anomalist himself, aiming to climb the ranks through sheer performance until he is recommended to the inner circle of Rainbow Wings. His true goal is to find the Pacific person who treated his mother's life as if it were as insignificant as an ant's. Ukiai dismisses the analysis as utter nonsense, trying to shield his true intentions. Speaker, addressing him as Mr. Blue Arc, proposes a partnership, promising to help him infiltrate Rainbow Wings and locate his mother's killer. The offer hangs in the air, a tempting path toward the truth he has sought for years. Stakes are raised as the conversation shifts toward the ultimate goal of his journey. Promise isn't just for information, but for the chance to exact a magnificent revenge on the one who ruined his life. In exchange for this life-changing assistance, the speaker asks for only one thing, a matter they describe as trivial. As the deal is laid bare, the path forward for Gukiai becomes more dangerous than ever. Facing the weight of this new reality, Gukiai demands to know exactly what he is getting into. Mysterious figure decides that some secrets are too dangerous to reveal, warning that the truth could bring a fatal disaster before asking for his cooperation during their upcoming time in the city. Sensing a deeper threat, Gukiai stops them in their tracks, desperate to understand how this stranger could possibly know his true identity. The answer, it seems, is far simpler than he expected. Figure claims an unselling ability to see through any disguise, peering directly at the true face hidden beneath every mask. Dismissing the claim as complete nonsense, Gukiai's patience wears thin as he questions whether they truly believe he is someone who can be so easily handled. The atmosphere grows increasingly heavy as the confrontation continues, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone involved. Despite the mounting tension, the silence between the opponents speaks volumes about the stakes of their meeting. Voice cuts through the standoff, warning Gukiai to stop putting on a front and pointing out the severe wounds on his neck and waist that desperately need medical attention. The casual farewell, the figure departs, leaving Blue Arc behind with a promise that they will cross paths again soon. Departure leaves a lingering sense of uncertainty in the air as the dust begins to settle. White returns to the area, though the aftermath of the encounter remains visible in the environment. Focus shifts away from the battlefield, moving toward the next chapter of this unfolding conflict. As time passes, the scene transitions to a more stable setting far from the previous chaos. Short while later, the location shifts to the Gaiamai residential compound, where a different kind of tension is brewing. Inside the compound, the residents wait with bated breath for news of their missing ally. Concern grows as they note that Blue Arc has not yet returned, marveling at his dedication to the mission, despite the life-threatening injuries he suffered. Realization of the hardship he faces settles in, leaving the group to contemplate the true cost of their current struggle. Navigating the current tension is no easy feat, as convincing Gukiai of the truth feels nearly impossible at this stage. Despite the skepticism, the effort wasn't for nothing. The first phase of the quest to uncover Gukiai's secret is officially complete, granting one splitting point, one skill point, and one attribute point. Reflecting on these gains, a bit of anxiety creeps in over what kind of nickname the public might bestow, fearing something lame like alien or bandage freak instead of cool codename. Wenming turns his attention to the attribute points, noting how the system mirrors an online game where strength, speed, and spirit each uniquely enhance his physical constitution and the power of his restraint straps. Leaving that speed is the deciding factor in any fight, he decides to invest his single attribute point there, hoping it will allow him to strike first and avoid a fatal blow. With the decision made, a quiet moment of focus follows as the system begins to process the upgrade. A subtle shift in his abilities starts to take hold, marking a small but vital step in his growing power. The atmosphere remains still, yet the internal change is palpable as he prepares for the next challenge. He takes a breath, grounding himself in the reality of his new stats and the path ahead. Fully committed to his choice, he looks forward, ready to face whatever mysteries Gukiai is still concealing. As he looks ahead, he evaluates his new capabilities, noting how the restraint strap truth can act as a lie detector to force honesty, while the detection skill grants him insight into an opponent's abilities through a simple touch. He observes that while the Madness branch clearly focuses on raw combat power through its restraint strap extension, his current priorities lie elsewhere. Rather than seeking pure strength, he realizes that his immediate survival and the ability to track down vital clues are far more important. This decision made, he successfully unlocks the learning permissions for the next skill within the Ruthless branch. The utility of the skill is promising, though he finds himself wondering about the specifics of the binding requirement, questioning if it requires a full body restraint or just a simple knot around a target's limb. Mused by the possibilities, he decides that once the skill is mastered, he will find a suitable target to test the limits and rules of these new powers. Focus then shifts as he navigates the interface, his mind already moving toward the next phase of his plan. The system prompts him with the option to create a new game character, a prospect that catches his full attention. Pauses to consider the implications of the expansion, calculating his next move within the game's mechanics. Calculates that he only needs 2 more splitting points to finalize the creation of this second character. Being a backup character would change everything, allowing him to investigate the orphanage with the security of knowing that if one persona meets with an accident, the other can continue the mission. The clear strategy in mind, he prepares for the challenges ahead, bolstered by the safety net of his growing power. Suddenly, a sharp moment of realization breaks his train of thought. Pauses, letting the silence settle as he reflects on his current situation. The atmosphere remains still, a brief calm before the inevitable storm of his next move. Takes a moment to steady himself, ensuring his composure is absolute. Every detail of his surroundings seems to fade as he focuses inward. Letting out a tired breath, he wonders if he might be overthinking the complexities of his position. Quiet is shattered by a formal announcement, identifying him as restricted level Esper number 1002, Jai Minju, and ordering him to prepare for an immediate interrogation by the visiting instructor. Instructor approaches, opening with a curious proposal about the Espers who have appeared in the outside world. Instructor addresses Jai Minju with a mockingly familiar tone, calling him little brother. Jai Minju is momentarily caught off guard by the sudden intrusion. Quickly masks his surprise, shifting his focus to the visitor standing before him. Covering his poise, he offers a polite but cautious greeting to the instructor as the evening settles in. Instructor notes his high energy with a smirk before shifting the conversation towards something more pointed. Sharp question is leveled at him, demanding to know how he could possibly be certain it is nighttime right now. Jai Minju retorts with dry logic, pointing out that the instructor frequently disturbs his sleep at this hour anyway. Quiet moment of tension lingers between them as the conversation shifts. The instructor offers a quick, apologetic laugh, admitting that there was something specific they had been wanting to ask. Focusing on a particular individual, the instructor's tone becomes more serious and inquisitive. Question is finally posed directly, pressing for confirmation on whether that person could actually be him. The weight of the accusation hangs in the air, leaving the room in a heavy, expectant silence. Esper freezes, stunned by the realization that the person being discussed is actually himself. Snap back, indignant at the suggestion that he resembles such an ugly figure, while another voice turns to the instructor and asks for the Esper's name. After a unanimous decision, the group opts to give this Esper a temporary designation. They settle on the name Black Pupa, and someone admits that seeing his photo immediately brought another person to mind. Esper tells the instructor to be blunt if he wants to call him ugly, insisting he can handle personal attacks without sugarcoating. The instructor brings up an old incident from the Esper's childhood, recalling how he once wrapped himself in toilet paper, and a nurse at the orphanage even photographed it. Protests that it was a foolish thing done in youth, and asks why he was arrested, pleading that after a month they should be able to confirm he is an ordinary person. The instructor pauses and prepares to explain the reason behind the arrest. The instructor reveals that someone made a prophecy concerning him, trailing into a single ominous accusation. The prophecy named him as the one who would destroy the world. Laughs the idea off, mocking the notion of easy world destruction and pointing out the absurdity of it all, noting that even self-harm is prevented by the restraining collar. A voice shrugs indifferently, suggesting there is no clear answer. Demands to know who started the rumors and requests that the rumor monger be brought to him, so they can confront each other face to face. After a beat of silence, the instructor refuses, curtly stating that arranging such a meeting is not possible. Tense question cuts through the refusal, asking if the old man is so distant he might as well be in outer space. Other voice answers that they have never met him and do not even know his identity. One explains that the mysterious figure has prophesied many major events that would shape the world, and each time those predictions unfolded exactly as foretold. Clarify that although he has helped avert several major disasters, they have never had direct contact with him, because he has never given them the chance. The person observes that the instructor has never looked so serious, making deception seem unlikely, yet they still scoff at the suggestion that they could destroy the world and call the idea laughable. Reminder arrives that Kong Yuling will be coming to see the other person soon. News is met with an incredulous reaction from someone in the room. Instructor says they will step out for a bit, leaving the two of them alone so they can speak freely without worrying about anyone else. Quiet confession follows that it has been a long time since they last saw her. No dialogue is present in this panel. No dialogue is present in this panel. No dialogue is present in this panel. After that silent panel, the protagonist remembers that the first time they met her was 3 years ago. The protagonist heard from the nurse about a new child at the orphanage, a mixed-race girl said to be frighteningly pale, deaf, and mute. Because of her, the nurses taught every child sign language, and restless kids blamed her, so at first no one had a good impression. Favored a crumpled white linen dress, and always carried a sketchbook with a pencil tucked inside, small details that made everyone label her a freak. Later came out that she wrote in the notebook, so others would not have to learn sign language for her. She refused to be a burden and was quietly sensible, avoiding trouble for others. The protagonist, however, was different. They were wild and unafraid of causing trouble, always running and jumping around everywhere. An impulsive streak came from a shared feeling the protagonist believed, just like her, that others saw them as a weirdo. And one day the memory turned darker. Last time the protagonist saw their parents, they were locked in a closet, told to wait there and not make a sound, and promised that the parents would be back soon. They felt foolish for having believed those words. Even after being sent to the orphanage, they would still lock themselves up, thinking that if they did so their parents might come back looking for them. Their parents never returned, not even once. As they grew up, they no longer needed anyone to search for them. The person was different. She wanted them by her side, where she could stop disguising herself or pandering to others, and she wanted to be together forever. Muffled, unintelligible sound slipped into the moment. He suddenly asked them a question. It was the first time they had ever felt needed by someone. Vowed to protect Kong Yuling without fail, insisting he could rely on her. Then called his name and asked whether he would abandon her like her parents had. Startled voice exclaimed that it really was Kong Yuling. Leaf spilled out as someone repeatedly said how great it was that Kong Yuling was okay. Silent, wordless panel holds the moment, a brief pause before anything is spoken. Unnamed voice attempts to speak but falters, producing only a stammered, unfinished admission that trails off. Sudden raw scream erupts and shatters the quiet, then two brief dashes interrupt the outburst. A piercing scream follows, prolonging the abrupt surge of panic. For the piercing scream, a harsh warning blinks into focus, forbidding physical contact and threatening that if it happens a second time, the offender will be stunned. Fresh, raw cry erupts, slicing through the tense air and keeping the panic alive. One of them brushes the shocks off, insisting the jolts will not kill them and that they have been shocked many times before, so they are used to it. Speaker presses the visitor, asking whether they were instructed to interrogate before being allowed to see them. Visitor admits they were told to ask about the speaker's superpower, explaining that the question was given to them. Speaker winces at the bluntness, convinced the questioner will be punished later, since the instructors would never allow such a direct inquiry about their power. Speaker admits they do not know in any straightforward way, arguing that what does not exist cannot be named, then apologizes for lying and explains that if they spoke their superpower aloud, neither of them would ever be able to leave. Visitor acknowledges the explanation and addresses Sydney directly, indicating they understand. Brief pause settles over them, the conversation holding in that quiet space. Vulnerable confession breaks the silence as the speaker admits that they miss the other person deeply. Moment lingers without words, the weight of the admission still hanging between them. One of them starts to speak but trails off, the sentence left unfinished as uncertainty takes over. Unfinished sentence dissolves as a firm, hidden voice cuts in to end the meeting and orders that she be taken away. She is escorted out. Another voice offers conditional reassurance if they behave, they may see each other again, and asks whether seeing her now proves they never harmed her. Resentful speaker lashes out, sarcastically calling them bodhisattvas for locking up an 11-year-old girl, and accusing them of taking pride in a morally flexible bottom line simply because they did not physically hurt her. The voice replies that, were it not mentioned, they often forget he is only 12. Noting that he always seems to be disguising himself and trailing off over whether an ordinary 12-year-old boy would behave the same. Boy asks if he may pose a question, and the hidden voices give him permission to proceed. Confronts them bluntly since they know he could one day destroy the world, should they kill him now. Taking a step back, he asks whether, if his power later loses control and destroys the laboratory, they would regret not having acted. Hidden voice offers to reveal the truth if they truly want to hear it. Boy demands to be told plainly what they intend. Explain that an Esper on the verge of death might erupt with potential far exceeding their own strength. And precisely because of that unknown danger they refuse to kill him, their plan is to control him instead. Laughs with relief at the explanation, pleased that the claim of no secret elimination lets him sleep more easily at night. Short, dismissive chuckle answers him, a small sound that carries more skepticism than comfort. Meeting is adjourned with a final instruction to end the conversation for now and to rest early. Meeting is adjourned with a final instruction to end the conversation for now and to rest early. And a quiet panel marks the immediate calm after business concludes. Brief beat follows, the room falling still as the scene drifts toward the next moment. Location caption anchors the story now in Dragon Country, Liajing Gaimai block, shifting the stage outward. System notice announces that consciousness has been loaded into the game character, signaling a sudden transfer into a virtual body. Other notification explains that, due to an increase in popularity, the game character's codename has been updated. New codename appears as Black Pupa, and the protagonist registers this fresh identity with a quick private reaction. Silent panel follows the announcement, giving space for the name to settle. A quiet moment passes as the implications of the update sink in. Notes that it has not even been half a day, and they have already given him a codename. An observation tinged with mild amusement. Forces himself into a steady plan, one step at a time. Primary objective is to find the exact location of that laboratory, and after that to try to quietly retrieve his original body and Kong Yuling. He begins to consider a final contingency, trailing off as the thought breaks off unfinished. Blank panel holds, the tension coiled but unspoken. Hidden voice cuts through the quiet with a brutal command to slaughter them all, the sudden cruelty shattering the stillness. Silence rushes in after the outburst, panels holding the shock. Scene lingers on that stunned pause, the moment stretching before reaction. Prized voices erupt, exclaiming that someone has come back, the revelation rippling through the nearby onlookers. Brief beat follows the commotion, panels reflecting the sudden shift in attention. He reassures himself that his reaction was fast enough, and that, as a result, he should not have been discovered, the relief quiet but cautious. Comforts himself with the thought that his reaction was fast enough, and that he should not have been discovered, the relief remains quiet but cautious, holding the moment in tentative stillness. Name cuts through the hush, Suzumai. Nearby voice stammers an address, the syllable breaking off as surprise and recognition ripple through the scene. System notification declares main quest 3, instructing an investigation into what the younger sister Suzumai is hiding, the directive underscored by a line of garbled characters that register like static. Panel contains no dialogue or captions, opening the sequence in silence. Subsequent panel remains uncaptioned, the visuals carrying the moment without words. Panic voice urgently insists that someone stop and demands to know what is happening. Harsher voice berates the other for finally waking up, mocking their laziness for getting up at 3 in the afternoon, and even asking if they are a pig. Narrator lays out the family. Suzumai is currently 16 in her first year of high school. Gu Wenyu is 17 in his second year, and about to enter his third. Once school resumes, the older brother is 19 and a college freshman. And so, the Gu Wenyu the narrator is controlling looks the youngest, his drooping eye corners giving him a perpetually sickly appearance. Another uncaptioned panel interrupts the sequence, a quiet visual pause in the middle of the recollection. Explanation follows that the younger sister uses the surname Su rather than Gui, because their parents established a rule. Sons take the father's surname while daughters take the mother's. One speaker dismisses the other abruptly, refusing to be bothered any further. Character mutters in disbelief, their reaction to her is stunned. Live report from the Liajing Daily News states that at 10:20 last night, an unknown Esper appeared in the downtown square and intervened in a Green Wings organization hostage situation. Broadcast continues that the Esper used black, band-like objects to kill 5 criminals and successfully rescued 5 hostages without causing civilian casualties. Witnesses say the Esper was entirely wrapped in black restraints called pupa, and the Liajing Anomalist Association has cordoned off the scene to sample and analyze the residual substances. The anchor announces that the branch vice president of the Liajing Anomalist Association will next explain related matters to the public. Following the anchor's announcement, the Anomalist Association's emergency expert panel confirms their decision based on the Esper's power traits and appearance. The being is officially named Black Pupa and temporarily classified as a B-rank observation target. The observer registers the B-rank label and realizes that his spurs are organized by a formal ranking system. Before Gu Kiai comes home, the protagonist decides to use restraint strap detection on Suzuma to uncover any other abilities she may have, hoping to complete the main quest right away. Restraint strap detection, once learned, functions so that when the restraint straps touch a human opponent, a stream of that target's data, attributes, and abilities appears in the user's mind. Fragmented line mentioning Cola briefly appears, its meaning unclear in the moment. Unprovoked sense of danger washes over the observer, accompanied by a sudden noise, and they wonder what just occurred. The main quest is marked complete. Consider that the reason for their doubt might be that they have never seen her use superhuman powers with their own eyes. Alternatively, they wonder if the uncertainty stems from not having determined exactly what kind of identity she holds among the demon hunters. Alternatively, they thought the unease might come from not having fixed exactly what kind of identity she held among the demon hunters. And she remembered the system specifying that there were a total of 3 major superhuman races when creating the game character, though at the time she had only recognized 2, the Esper and the anomaly envoy. Putting the pieces together revealed the missing race, the final superhuman type, with the exorcist. Familiar, upbeat voice remarked on how rare it was to find both of them at home at the same time. Her mother chimed in happily that she would be cooking tonight. He ordered them to wait until after dinner before going out to play. One pointed out that Bluark, Gukai Yi, had been clearly badly injured the previous night, yet now looked as if nothing had happened. Conversation noted that his spurs could recover from injuries very quickly, and that the Anomalist Association's medical care might also be outstanding. One of them mentioned that their father had said he would be coming back tonight. An older sibling waved the concern away, saying that if he wanted to come, he should just be allowed to. Sighed at the thought that the old brother and their father might start arguing again tonight, despite not having seen each other in 2 years, while another voice replied that who knew what would happen. And someone began reciting the United Nations classification for spurs, organized by danger level from highest to lowest. Hierarchy ran from restricted level, through T1 disaster level, T2 dragon level, T3 chief level, T4 standard level, down to T5 harmless level. Clarified that T5 harmless level spurs possessed harmless abilities, would not have their personal freedom officially restricted, and could work the same jobs as ordinary people, while T4 standard level spurs were stronger than harmless level, but still relatively mediocre overall. 3 chief level spurs were described as the best among spurs, and T2 dragon level spurs were noted as the mainstay of the Superhuman Association. 1 disaster level became the standard for eligibility into the Rainbow Wings candidate list, meaning only spurs who reached disaster level in the association's ability assessment could be considered. So the highest tier, restricted level, association statistics recorded that only 1 restricted level spur had ever appeared in history, and that individual had been confirmed dead, with their information kept strictly confidential and not released to the public. Registered the chilling fact that only 1 restricted level spur had existed and was already dead, and quietly hoped they were not referring to her. Time in the laboratory had felt like being dead, and the thought nagged at her if the restricted level spur listed on the official site was truly her. Were the people in that lab really agents of the Superhuman Association? Understood the stakes clearly moving against those researchers would be tantamount to declaring war on the United Nations, and the disaster level spurs of Rainbow Wings would certainly rush in to stop her. She hesitated for a moment, turning the problem over in her mind and looking for another approach. Brief, garbled, and decisive, she tried to find a way to drag this family into being her. She made good use of the fake family identity. Guiding them would not be difficult, she told herself, and the thought opened up further possibilities. Grief over their mother's death already bred hostility toward Rainbow Wings, which would only make it easier to form a united front. Counting the people they could call on, she judged that they would be a fighting force not to be underestimated. Casual voice broke through the planning, addressing Little Yu and bringing the moment back to the present. The question came plainly, had Little Yu stayed at home the entire night? Added that Little Yu seemed to be acting strangely today, a small observation loaded with curiosity. Startled, Little Yu registered the sudden attention with a sharp, visible reaction.